All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for
Legend of the Galactic Heroes, episode 85. Narrator, why do you have to keep doing this to us? Why do you
spoiling?
You just keep spoiling
and
giving ominous messages like that shortly before a bunch of potential death flags and stuff for a beloved character. We already got scared with Mittermeier once. Please don't actually have that happen for real.
Yeah. Well, see, I think that's because primarily like Mittermeier is one of those people that's going to survive this whole mess of things.
I don't know, man.
But
I don't know.
But Ruenthal, I don't think necessarily.
Ruenthal probably not. But if he did, and he actually found a family, you know, and managed to get past that whole thing and look forward to a child of his being born, that would be wonderful.
That'd be special. Yeah.
But
on the side though, with Reinhardt, he's really not doing well with the notion of Yang being dead.
Right.
And he is, you know, still able to do quite a bit from his bedside, but he's been there for quite a while, and there is an aspect of him potentially wasting away just from not having any mountains to climb.
2 spoonfuls of soup. Yep.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to waste away if you keep doing that, man.
And the fact that the narrator focused on that and was like, it was possible that if the person hadn't come in, he might have taken another. It's like, what? Why is how many spoonfuls of soup he has right now that important?
So important. Yeah. Yeah. So, y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone. Now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below. Then come back here for the discussion.
Okay.
All right. So Lang has been promoted. It will be short-lived. The narrator already said that he's going to die. It's just a question of, is he die of old age or what?
Hopefully
we'll see.
not.
We'll see.
But
big thing, though, is that he is starting to get a little bit trigger-happy with within the Empire and start throwing a bunch of people under the bus, which means...
in bed with Rubinsky.
Yes, exactly. Which means with the death of Boltic, a character that, for the most part, you know, he had some skeevy elements to him.
But I actually kind of felt bad for the guy because there were a lot of situations where it was just like he was thrown into a really shitty situation and was trying his best to make the most of it.
Right,
and
exactly.
And it just went bad time after time.
Yeah, of all the characters that are like those bureaucrats of sorts where you're like, I don't really like you in general, but like... you're not a bad guy.
Because there's the idea of like bureaucrats in general being awful, and then there's the idea of the bureaucratic position being awful. And I feel like for the most part, Boltic was the bureaucratic position is awful, right? And it's he
went from Rubinsky to to this situation. And it's just like and in a lot of ways, of all the people that were like, we were watching Boltic, being like, are you, seated in this specific spot to do something? And he might have been. That's the thing.
Possibly.
He might have been. And Rubinsky was like, okay, hold on. Who can I
give to
Who can I give to him? Oh, cool. I'll give him someone that theoretically will eventually need to be killed by me. Because Boltic might know things about Rubinsky that he's like, oh, you're theoretically a threat, but also you have no reason to come after me because I've given you a good setup,
Yep.
Even though, he had to deal with a lot of shit just in general because it's, a new regime change and all that.
Sure.
Yeah, that was something that made sense for Rubinsky, but the fact that he's also like, no, it is entirely irrelevant actually who I did. It just needed to be someone that was innocent so that I gave him a rope to hang himself with.
Yep.
I mean, Rubinsky's a genius, but the fact that he's like, oh, okay, I can do this on a whim, and Lang can also set this up on a whim.
Yeah, because and the thing is
that's
that
the terrifying part.
That's the terrifying part, and it's also the part of Lang's stupidity because he's still operating under the predilections of the old regime, right? Which in the old regime, he would have been able to do this, and it would have been just fine.
He wouldn't have needed Rubinsky.
He wouldn't have needed Rubinsky, but he also wouldn't have a bunch of crazy blowback from killing Boltic, right? Yeah. But in this situation, it doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah, competence and I would say not political integrity, but more along the lines of it's a form of integrity with regards to maybe the legal system.
Right. Reinhard needs to be able to trust the people under him, right? Because he has done something that is incredible and is unprecedented and gives all kinds of opportunities for those who would seek to acquire power for themselves.
Corruption,
right? Corruption, right? Because you just had a hostile takeover. That is where corruption, like that's one of the best places for corruption to spring up, right?
Yeah.
So he's got to nip it in the bud, right? So Lang, the things that you do in a 500-year-old, regime that has had plenty of time for the corruption to fester, that's different than here.
Yeah, he would just casually go and plant some evidence and have someone end up faking, their own. Well, no, he would fake a murder into looking like a suicide, and then there you go.
Didn't kill himself.
Look, it's done. And literally anyone here with half a brain knows that this was a little bit convenient and easy, and also this came right after a promotion from this guy, so this feels a bit
right. I'm sure that there will be all kinds of memes out there of like there are things that we know that are facts. There's that Bittenfeld likes to charge into combat. There's that Oberstein is a cold son of a bitch, and that Boltic didn't kill himself.
Right.
Like it's
but with all of this being said here, this is a trail that leads back to Rubinsky with regards to the corruption.
It's true.
Now, the reason why Rubinsky, I think, is willing to play this game is because he's looking for bigger fish to fry.
Yep.
And in some ways, Lang has no real evidence of Rubinsky's involvement in this, in some ways because he killed Boltic.
That's true. Although
I know that in some ways Rubinsky probably is wanting to be brought into the public eye again with a positive spin on
that
things.
way, right? Because he can't do that much from the shadows. He can still do a fair amount, but not nearly as much as he could when he was ruling Fejon.
Well, right, but because he wasn't in the shadows at that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in this case here, he is a puppeteer who has ties to the Church of Terra, but also they don't necessarily like him. But but specifically within Fejon, he knows enough of how these kinds of power structures work that he can get the Empire to attack itself. And and Lang is a nice kind of linchpin for a lot of
he's a good first target. And the hope is that okay. Not for Rubinsky, but for, the Empire, is that, okay, Lang gets taken out, cool. We got a weed taken out, and that's it. What Rubinsky's hoping for is, but will that be the start of something, of
something a little bit bigger?
Right, of Oberstein's whole thing, of like, all right, let's really clean house then,
Yeah, and this is where I think Oberstein's death is pretty well foreshadowed here.
Sure.
Is that he's okay with the house somewhat collapsing on him as long as we build a bigger and better house.
Right.
So he's okay with some aspects of the architecture being, done away with because it doesn't fit in the new purpose function aesthetic or what have you.
Yep. But the problem is that Oberstein also plays a very important role in this empire. And as much as all the military people are like, yeah, Oberstein, he sucks, he's awful, like, oh, dang it, why couldn't he have died in the explosion? When it comes right down to it, they will be sad that he's gone when he leaves. They might not realize it right away, but, then it's why didn't anyone do this thing? Why hasn't this thing been taken care of? Oh, Oberstein used to do that. Oh.
Yeah, in some ways, I feel like his role is so thankless in that he has so much power. No one has enough oversight, really, to be able to see what he's doing.
And maybe that's why they hate him.
And that's why, in some ways, they probably don't like him, is that they can tell things trickle back to him.
Right.
But they assume some kind of ill intent or greed or some kind of motive that is nefarious.
Right, that he's very much on the outside. Like, it's us, and then there's Oberstein.
Right, because I think, well, on some level, Oberstein is a cold son of a bitch, so he actually doesn't care about the feelings or the humanity of it. It's just, no, I am trying to help Reinhardt build a very unique and long-lasting regime.
Yep.
And in order to do that, I'll do whatever it takes.
And it's admirable, and at the same time, and at the same time, it's like, oh, dude, you could probably, if you put in an extra 20% effort just to make sure that, people know that you're not their enemy. Although sometimes you are their enemy, so that is good to have.
I don't think he can really do that.
Maybe not, but I feel like, because I
think it's actually Reinhardt's job in order to make sure that that's done properly, because he doesn't have anyone above him other than Reinhardt.
That's true.
Like he answers directly to Reinhardt.
Yeah. So maybe it would be Reinhardt, and then it would also be Ruhenthal and Mittermeier, because they're his peers.
Sure, but even then, Mittermeier and Ruhenthal have different domains of political power.
Especially now, yeah.
Well, like literally now, it's now. Like in some ways, Mittermeier and Ruhenthal didn't have political power when they were military people.
But now Ruhenthal has political power, and Mittermeier doesn't.
Yeah, but he has a legit, unique, separate domain of political power. It's not in the hierarchy of like a pyramid or something like that. It's now a different line entirely to a different pyramid over there.
And there's a part of me that wonders if Reinhardt is doing this intentionally by saying, I'm going to move the capital of Fezzan, right? And it's this big deal, and woohoo, awesome, right?
It might be just a simple geographic change immediately.
Right, which totally makes sense, given where Fezzan is located and everything.
Yep.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it was also a backup plan of, if something tragic were to happen to me, I've set up Ruhenthal in the position of old power on Odin and everything. And
Ruhenthal's in Heinesen. He's in the Alliance territory.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, no. I know what you're getting at, but I think the main point is that Reinhardt is not really thinking about the future with regards to regime changes if he dies or something like that.
Yeah.
I think what he's doing is basically like, I'm going to keep Ruhenthal in the place that was specifically where the enemies were, because his loyalty will be immediately understood if he starts to shift things a bit, because he can actually rally potentially people that would be enemies of mine.
Right.
But if that's what he does, then that's what he does. He's in his own little space over there.
And he'll be able to run it just fine because he's Ruhenthal.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, it's in some ways the play off of the old line of the keep your friends close and your enemies closer, and then the response to that is whoever said that didn't have many enemies.
Right, yeah. Yeah. You don't want to get surrounded.
You don't actually want to get surrounded. That's just not practical.
Right.
You'd rather have an early warning system if that was a thing. So I'm really excited about all this other stuff happening with the lower admirals, with Mittermeier, where they're like, okay, we can see that things are a bit dicey right now.
Right.
So we're going to make sure we're talking to people and getting everyone on the ready in case Lang starts exercising too much power and starts throwing Lutz under the bus, starts throwing Oberstein under the bus, because Lang's reasoning for going after Ruhenthal is entirely emotional and personal. There is
silence,
no gain
you wretch.
Right,
that's it.
Right, but there's no gain that he gets from this.
Nope. It is, and that's one of the things where I feel like Lang is a perfect character to have as an antagonistic source of conflict, because I totally understand where his thought process comes from.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's from the old regime.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I also totally understand where his shortcomings and competency comes from, because he's from the old regime. I'm sure that it was a competitive, cutthroat thing in its own way and whatnot. We saw some of it, with Reinhardt and things like that.
And he was smart enough to survive that and make it here.
And in the internal, like secret police, department and all that stuff, or whatever it was called back in the Golden Bomb dynasty. But over here, making a move where you stake everything, your life and your existence and all of that, for petty revenge. You dumb son of a bitch. There must not have been many big fish in that pond that you were in before, because you would have been gobbled up way before now.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen a lot from characters in this story that is an ultimate downfall, especially of all the great men in the story, is that ultimately pride is their greatest downfall. Most of the characters that have been crushed, like utterly thus far, was not entirely because of incompetence. It was usually because of a denial of reality because of pride.
Yeah, incompetence bred out of pride.
Yes.
You know, it's the and with the big exception, of course, being Yang, and that's why it's, you know, that's why his death was so tragic, right? But so in this situation, I just hope he doesn't do too much damage before he goes, you know?
Well, that's probably where Rubinsky is okay with this. Is he's like, oh, he's gonna do a bit though before he actually gets taken out.
Yep. And
what was the comment about him donating lots of money?
Yeah, that was odd. I wasn't sure. So there were two vibes that I got from that. Is one that it was maybe just as it was a genuine thing, right? That's one thing, right? He wanted education to do well. The other was that it was some kind of like sketchy, like, I'm going to fund schools.
Tax evasion kind of thing.
Well, sure. I mean, I feel like that's actually fairly innocuous, but more of like, if it's something where it's I want to specifically guide how certain areas of education kind of develop or things like that. Like if he has some separate thing that he had been building up.
Sure. What if it's actually the opposite and he's paying his dues? This is what I got as the vibe, was that the donations are actually a way of disguising the fact that he's being paid. He's paying someone else.
He's been bought and he's paying the piper. Yeah.
He's paying the piper constantly for the role that he's in.
Sure.
And it's like his taxes that he's doing specifically to those parties that have helped him. So if it's Rubinsky, and he's basically funneling his money through these, welfare institutions, essentially, where they might just all be secretly owned by Rubinsky, because one of the things that is a constant bit of world building that eludes us, I would say, is that Rubinsky has influence, power, and money, and yet we see him hiding constantly in an office, so we don't know actually how
far it goes.
So I would guess, because he did a lump sum of that in addition to apparently he's always been giving a cut of his salary since he'd been a junior government official to these kinds of institutions, was that the promotion was like, here you go, this is what we promised, and then he's like, and thank you, there you go.
Sure.
And he's like, 100,000 imperial marks? It's nothing. I don't...
Right.
Like, I don't need that. Like,
yeah.
It is a bit of an aspect of, I would say, at least with regards to how we've seen things done in the U.S. specifically. When you see donations being done, or with politicians specifically, very like weird kinds of money stuff being moved around, it's almost a badly kept secret that every politician
has been
professionally bought by lobbyists, and that's essentially what might be happening here, is that this is just a more subtle form of it, because it cannot be looked at in there's no obvious trickery or corruption involved here. It's the money's being funneled around, eventually to get to its intended target. But
well, and one of the things I thought was kind of interesting is that Lang was talking about how we knew that those were the guys, but we couldn't actually get them because we needed evidence, because that's how things work in this regime, right?
So it gives him a little bit of a credit thing of like, oh, they were doing their job.
Right, but really, they were just the wrong organization to be sent to handle this, right? Because they're not used to finding evidence and doing those kinds of investigation. They're used to rumors and things like that. So really, Kessler would have been much better suited to this.
Right. And yet Kessler's way of doing things is probably as being like a secret police guy, or military police guy.
It might have been outside of his jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's probably something that's being completely phased out because we're no longer in war. So military police are probably going to get lower and lower in terms of the power that they would have, because you're going to have less military stuff in the field in general. So in some ways, I really like the way in which it kind of gives Lang a bit of a, hey, no, you're doing a decent job for the most part. It's just that Rubinsky had such a good, control on his people that were making this happen, that he's like, Oh, no. You would never have found evidence on them.
Well, and also, okay, Lang, so we talked about pride being the downfall of a lot of characters.
Oh.
Let's talk about greed for a second.
Sure.
Lang, you had a golden opportunity
to throw
Rubinsky under the bus. You actually got to meet with the dude. Now, think about it this way, right?
Yeah.
Lang is a bit of a snake. Now, I think one of his biggest weaknesses is that he doesn't realize how much everyone knows he's a snake.
Yeah, yes.
But the fact that everyone knows you're a snake, that can be a good thing.
That can
Because
be
then
a
you can
good
be
thing.
like, hey, I did my snake shit.
Yeah.
Here's what I got. I got you Rubinsky.
Right.
He tried to get me. Here he is.
Yeah.
That would have been like
yeah.
the Admiralty in unison would have given like a gasp of awe and admiration of like
Yeah. Now they might they might basically be like, cool,
Wait,
we're not going to immediately judge you as a snake from now on.
Sure, yeah, or like
and we'll give you 500,000 imperial marks instead of 100,000.
Right.
But you know, it's not gonna, like, in some ways I understand the greed comparison because I think it's perfect. I think it's that if he turned in Rubinsky, it wouldn't be a thing of where he would immediately get the greatest reward for it. It would just be a thing of where he'd be like, people would, you know, be proven wrong about me.
Right.
But
instead
I can make way more money, get way more influence in general, potentially with this kind of, you know, this guy here.
Yeah, it's
so
well and the but I also want one person specifically to pay.
Yeah.
Right? It's
I have an emotional reason.
It's not that he wants the respect and admiration of the masses, right? It's that he wants that one person who slighted him to, you know, he doesn't believe in killing with kindness, right?
Well,
like
again, it's a pride thing.
Yeah.
So, we had Reinhardt's sister brought up, and the fact
the elephant in the room was addressed.
The fact that it was addressed in such an extensive manner, and Mariendorf is doing her part to try and push nicely, tenderly, to have Reinhardt address this, and that it was brought up a second time with a flashback. I think we're very, 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 very close to Reinhardt being able to call out to his sister and be like, I need your help.
But will it be too late?
It could be too late. But the thing is, I saw pep in Reinhardt's step this episode.
That's true. You know,
and there was mention of the whole thing of like,
bitch, you know?
right, the curse being put on Rubinsky, maybe also on Reinhardt. But I really love the idea here that Reinhardt looking at these stupid people around him and stuff like that, like Job Truna asking for a job,
right?
And he's just like, the fuck, what? This guy's still around? Sure. Go back to your homeland. Be an official there in name only, basically. You actually did it?
Right.
Do you want to die? Like,
I knew he was shameless, but god damn.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's that, like, that indignation, that desire to kind of, like,
right.
Like, at least, assume people have some level of pride, if you will.
You're using Bonetti's defense against me, huh? You know? Like...
So I could see this actually being the way where Reinhardt trends back into the light as being someone who has strength. And if he is somewhat listening to Mariendorf here, that means that I just really wanted this for a while. I want Conversation 2.0 with Anna Rose and Mariendorf. I really, really, really want that, because with these two ladies actually talking to each other, they can do so much, theoretically.
Yes. So something I want to bring up. My preconception for this show and for some of the characters was that Reinhard would die at some point, and that it would be the Greek tragedy, right? Of he, you know, he learned his lesson too late, you know, that even he had his faults, and he was not perfect, he was not a golden god, and he fell, right? With the way it seems to be going, I wonder if it's actually going to be the opposite of that, where it's that Reinhard,
he is a golden god.
He is a golden god. He survives. He does all the stuff.
Okay.
But all the people around him
fall.
Trying
to keep him up,
Yeah.
basically.
And then basically...
And then he eventually dies?
Well, that he learns his lesson, and that's the only thing that he has.
Oh.
That maybe...
I still think he's going to die.
I think he's...
I think he could go through all of that and then die afterwards.
Yeah. And that I would be totally fine with.
But still, like, bear a child. Well, I mean, he won't bear it, you know. He's not going to be doing
Sire.
You know. Sire, exactly. Thank you. Pass on what he's learned.
Yeah.
Have a little bit of not a redemption, but kind of a little bit of a self-actualization with regards to his limits, and then turn over what he's bought with his blood, sweat, and tears,
and of him and his subordinates,
and his sanity almost, to the next generation.
Right.
And it'll be something that they won't do the same way. In some ways, I think that the fact that he has this autocratic dictatorship really like means that on some level, as he democratizes certain aspects of it, that trend is going to continue. And then we'll see some aspect of the cycle where things will, you know, have some kind of new aspect of a, you know, government body that's represented by the people, or the people feel actually represent them.
Yeah.
Or also in written, you know, thing do represent them. And then that will be the seeds of whatever comes next that the show will probably not show us or give us, because then it'll be
right.
Like,
It's the
journey continues.
Right.
Life
exactly.
continues.
You know,
Continues.
we have the legend of the Galactic heroes.
Right.
I just am picturing the bit that we got of Yang in a couple episodes back, where Frederica was imagining him growing old and dying of, you know, surrounded by family, right?
Yeah.
How awesome would that be if that happened with Reinhard? And then as it happens, maybe he's not surrounded by as many people as he would like, right? And he just thinks about all the people that he wishes were here with him.
Yeah, that definitely
Yang,
feels like,
you know, like
a theme that would be powerful.
And then
in the
that's
of his demise.
And then that's where he truly comes to realize the cost of the path that he walked.
Sure.
You know, like
Yeah.
But if he'll be so lucky, who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
Things are heating up. There's a lot of terrorists kind of making things happen in a violent and chaotic way, and Rubinsky is about ready to try and bring himself back into the public eye.
Good luck. Not actually good luck.
I will say I will be impressed if he makes it happen.
Yeah.
Because I think if he makes it happen, he's gonna stay there for like the rest of his life.
But if he but it could be very easily where
very
it's the
short, because
it could straight up
dying or something.
I'm gonna be a made man, you know. And then for any of you who've seen the Goodfellas,
yeah.
Oh fuck.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
But
that's a good reference there.
Yeah.
But y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get an early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all
next time.